Oh, hello there, yes. It's going to be a bit of a damp one. Still, dangerously close to summer holidays. Anyway, today we're going to have a sort of deeper dive into a special concerning report from Don't Divide Us into the teaching of CRT in schools. Yes, all over the usual outlets that, well, let's dive into that. Yes, well, I was prompted into this by Alka Siegel-Cuthbert, who was on Hi, I'm Peter Whittle's The New Culture Forum yesterday. Of course she was, because she fits into that category exactly. And who are these race experts? Anyway, she's produced a report on them, dratted race experts. And yes, indeed, the question we're asking today is, who are these experts? Well, she's looked at various schools that use various things that she doesn't like, and we'll come on to the reason she doesn't like them in a bit. But she's basically highlighting the use of third-party organisations that provide training to schools, which is something that has been going on for a very, very long period of time. It's not some magical new thing. However, the magical new thing appears to be that certain people shouldn't be providing things to schools because they're bad. Yes, anyway, she looks at a variety of organisations, about 50 of them, and she finds that 48 out of the 49 are promoting, in her own words, contested political beliefs, her own words, from critical race theory, her own words, as if they were verified knowledge. Now, we'll come on to that particular thing. And, yes, in the executive summary, she says, isn't it dreadful that these organisations are getting all this money? And to which I have to sort of say, well, groups that you work for on a regular basis, like Spiked, will argue it's a very good thing because we need an open market in schools. How else are they going to improve? There's a real sleight of hand with this, in the sense that what she's done is she's taken a list of things that she doesn't like. She lumps them together under what she has decided is critical race theory. She's then decided that these organisations, because they use these types of words, are therefore promoting CRT in schools. However, if we actually look at the words themselves, we end up with a bit of a problem, because leaving aside the contested theories bit of it, because I don't know if you can have very much in any form of psychology or sociology something that isn't a contested theory, but leaving that aside, we end up with various things that she's lumped together as CRT. So let's just do the first few and we'll try and see where they come from. Well, there's the concept of white privilege. If you dig into the history of discussions about race, you'll find that the context of the concept of white privilege, if you like, is something that can be traced back to the 1930s. It's not a new thing. And, you know, if we are talking about racial hierarchies, then you can see instantaneously we start talking about things like privilege, because that goes hand in hand with the word hierarchy, doesn't it? Let's look at the next one, unconscious bias. Doing a bit of digging, that basically is something that became popular in Clinton's America in the 1990s, about 1995. It's something that Marxists in most of their writing have been sort of using for about 100 years before that. So we end up with something, again, that's not particularly new. Racialized identity is something that most historians would agree on. That weird concept of people agreeing on things is an idea that goes back to the 1600s. It goes back to the beginning of mass black incarceration in slavery in Americas, and that's where we get notions of racialized identity. And writings since then have basically gone on that basis. You can pick out almost any of these kind of things on here, but it's very hard to tie them down explicitly to a notion of CRT, certainly one that's being taught in schools. Now, if these kind of ideas are out there and on a sociological and or psychological viewpoint, then that's what's going to be used. Does Alka want us to use other forms of words here? I'm not really quite sure, because, I mean, the problem I have with this effectively is, let's talk about the underachievement of white working class boys, right? Now, instantaneously, you're in contested theory territory there. And obviously, if you had somebody like, I don't know, let's say Peter Whittle, banging on about white working class underachievement, are you going to call him a Marxist? Because effectively, that is a very Marxist phrase, seeing the world through a class lens. And then if you layer on race on top of that, you are into all of that kind of intersectionality business, aren't you, eh? Instantly, you're one of those friends of Adorno and Horkheimer, and you're a cultural Marxist, aren't you? Maybe not. Yeah. Anyway, leaving that aside, and, as I say, please do disagree with me here, but I can't see realistically how I can get angry about any of this stuff unless I decide that it's a Marxist plot. And if you do decide it's a Marxist plot, then of course you can get quite cross about it. But anyway, let's look at the recommendations. The government to commission an independent review of third-party organisations that provide lessons, materials and instructions in schools. Right, okay, fine. The government will find whatever it wants to, won't it? Yeah, it'll find all these bad people that shouldn't be doing things, right? And, you can produce a block list if you want. You can take people to court if you want. I'm not really quite sure it's going to help anyone in a school. The Department of Education to issue an explicit and mandatory instruction to schools that their job is to educate, as already stipulated in the Education Act 96. Yes, indeed, they do that basically on a weekly basis. People like me are really aware of our need to educate, okay? We don't need to be told the law every single second of the day, unless, of course, you have a kind of worry about the communists, which is effectively what this is. Department of Education issues an explicit and mandatory instruction to Ofsted to make impartiality a priority in its guidance for inspectors and assessment criteria for judging schools. Now, that's as open-ended as I can think of anything, right? Yeah, impartiality. Okay. It's actually very, very hard to teach older young people in an impartial way. They're not stupid, We've actually, but despite what people like Alka seem to want to latch on to, and, I know she's an educator, so I'm sure she doesn't. However, the moment you get into this territory, you do tend to go back to this idea that, having a discussion about certain things will lead to young people getting the wrong impression. I don't know if that's actually true. I've been teaching sociology on and off for about 20 years. I don't think I've ever persuaded any young person to become a Marxist through doing it. They might well lean that way already, and they might kind of firm up their thoughts from doing extra reading. But I can honestly say, in the time that I've been teaching, I've never had a child that's done that. Never. Yeah? They might be left-leaning, like I say, but I don't think I could persuade any of them that I'm right, and I wouldn't really want to. And it's good when they kick back at things that I say, because that's healthy debate, which is also one of those things supposedly we're supposed to be after. And building on the above recommendations of our petition, we suggest that a body comprising members who represent a diversity of viewpoints. Oh dear, a diversity. That's a bit of a CRT communist phrase, isn't it? And proven scholarly knowledge, whatever that means. Does that include me? Probably not. Of disciplines, curriculum subjects and experience in teaching is established. Its remit should be to provide impartial scrutiny of current curriculum content, pedagogy, and educational standards of contested topics being proposed for curriculum inclusion. The body should be a permanent one whose statutory status provides substantive and practical support for impartial education. Yes. What does that sound like to you? Does that sound to you like impartiality? Because it doesn't to me. What that sounds like is a group of people who will decide things that cannot be taught in schools, even as a contested theory, which is effectively what this is all about. Which is why you will still see Alka trundling around in places like Spiked and meeting her friend Andrew Doyle on GB News again and again and again and again. And just on a final note, where exactly does the funding come for this woman? Who who exactly is paying her the money to do this I mean, she's basically a sort of one-horse pony. So, one-horse pony? One-trick pony. You know what I mean. She basically works on her own. So who exactly is funding her to do this? And what makes her the expert? On another blunt level, if she doesn't accept all of those things on her bad list, then how on earth are you going to teach stuff about race? Or, drum roll, I guess that's the whole point. You don't, do you? You don't teach contested theories. You don't teach things that might be something that Alka and GB News don't like. Anyway, rant over. Have a lovely week.